gonna die. Go too fast. I'm taking 3.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at a replay in the Shchors. Yes, I know it's been a whole long time since I've actually played the Shchors. Kind of keeping with the theme of playing ships that I haven't played in a long time, but are really, really good ships. At tier 7, this cruiser is pretty amazing. When you compare her to the Pensacola, I mean, obviously this thing is going to win against the Pensacola. Against the Miyoko, it's hard to say, because I do really enjoy the Miyoko, and actually with all these ARP missions and getting these new like the ships, well, they're not new, they just different colored ships that are all the same. You do see a lot of them in battle nowadays, and it's just a shame to see sometimes some of the captains take out the Miyoko and just get obliterated right at the beginning because they have no idea how to play the ship whatsoever. The Miyoko does take a bit of skill to play. Well, skill, I guess just practice. Just practice. I mean, you just got to get used to her. Much like the Shchors here. The Shchors has no armor. None whatsoever. I mean, more than a British cruiser. But that's still not saying a whole lot, I guess. Because before the British cruisers came into the game, I mean, I would have argued that the Russian cruisers were the lowest armored cruisers in the game. They're very easy to citadel. Obviously now with the British cruisers, that's not the case, but still, the Shchors can get obliterated very early on. And you can see kind of with my crazy maneuvers here as to, you know, that's kind of what I'm trying to get accomplished with them, is just not be the first person spotted. I just don't want to be the first person spotted. I'm very conscious of it. You can't always prevent it, because sometimes we'll see, actually in this replay here, a pretty advantageous moment, right? Like I'm not spotted, well I guess I am now, but the destroyer pops up, right? I could have turned away and not fired and, you know, maybe got unspotted a lot quicker, but no. Decided to go for it. I mean, these are some pretty opportune shots. If I could actually land any of them, it would be pretty opportune, but still, I'm gonna take the shots off anyway. Why not? But as well, what the Shchors has going for her is range, and because of the range, it's a very usable range. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. You know, it does give you the option of kind of playing it safe in the back at the beginning, much like I do with a lot of my cruisers right at the beginning of the battle like this, just kind of judging what's going on, right? Seeing where the enemy's going, what our team is doing, and where we're going to want to try and push, and, you know, see what's going on in that respect. And so far, looking at the mini-map, it looks like B and C are the main objectives of the of what's taking place at this point in time, but still, everything's kind of up in the air. We do note the enemy ships over there at C, right? And you know, they are putting up a bit of a fight, and in fact, are capping the point. I believe they're capping. They'll soon start capping and get a cap there. So there's that going on. But for myself, I was pretty concerned about the B point, because B is always going to be the point. When there's 3 caps like this, B is always the point that decides it, right? It always is. It's the way the map works. So if at the very least I'm able to provide some sort of defense over here at B, you know, maybe my team will pull through. And so far, it's not going so great. We've already lost a destroyer. Now, I've got this Tirpitz, right? And I'm not going to not fire the Tirpitz. I'm going to try and get this guy on fire. Now, because of the way I use my commanders, right, as I work my way up in, like in the Russian cruiser line, I'm always moving the same commander to the next ship. Like, for example, the commander I have in my Donskoy right now, he is going to be moved to the Moskva once I get her. And then, you know, the Chapiev commander goes into the Donskoy, Shchors goes into Chapiev. So with that in mind, this guy isn't really trained up yet at all, because I haven't played the Shchors very much. So I think he only has 2 skills right now. So more importantly, no demolition expert. So the fires I thought was going to be a little difficult to come across. Now we've got the Benson out here, and the Benson kind of doesn't know what's going on, I suppose, and he gets really unlucky in that I'm just able to continuously spot him, right, and get these few first shots off and just do a bit of damage. And it stalls their cap here at the B point as well, and just lets the Benson know that I'm aware of what's taking place here. Now we see the enemy turrets charging forward, and I've got my friendly North Carolina here coming up on the starboard side. So I'm going to try and support the friendly North Carolina, but I'm also getting really lucky here. If the turrets wasn't focused on the North Carolina, the turrets could definitely just look at me and do a whole bunch of damage to me here. So I was very lucky in that the turrets wasn't paying too much attention to me. 4-kilometer range is what the torps are on the shores, and I do have the turrets within the range, so I figure, what the hell, I'm going to fire off these torpedoes. The Russian torpedoes are incredibly fast, by the way, pretty good, and I do end up getting the kill from the fires that I set to the turret, so fantastic. We have an enemy Myoko here off in the distance, so we're going to put some shots into this player, and then, yeah, definitely going to ground myself. Oh, goddamn. I immediately looked for the smoke because I expected to be in a British cruiser, but no. Gonna ground myself here, so we're gonna try and get out of this whole situation. This Myoko, if this Myoko were to fire at me with armor piercing, look, I pretty much am broadside onto him. Nothing I can do about it because of my stupidity here. That guy could have killed me very easily. Fortunately for me, the Myoko is more concerned about my allied North Carolina than, rather than shoot at me. And this really speaks to the whole idea of, with your cruisers and generally with any ship that you're, playing in a battle like this, you do want to stay with your teammates. One of the benefits of having teammates around is suddenly, instead of a 100% chance the enemy's going to shoot at you, there's now a 50% chance if there's two of you, for example, right? So you got to keep these things in mind. Unfortunately, we do lose the North Carolina, so that kind of sucks. And we are down one battleship to the enemy right now, so not doing so great. You can see the enemy has a pretty strong hold over there at sea. Even though we're contesting it, there are a lot of, well, there's a big battle being fought there, but there's, a lot of enemy ships there to back them up. Over here at B, we don't have the B point, but we do have the turrets gone, and we have this Myoko here, who I managed to set on fire, by the way, very close to death. So there we go, my ally finishes him off, fantastic. I'm able to help out, well, it's in New Orleans. I mean, I have decent AA on the shores, it's not fantastic, but at least still able to help out killing those planes. Now, we have an enemy battleship there off in the distance, and I wasn't really looking to tangle too much with this player, the enemy North Carolina, right? What I'm hoping to do is to stay bow on to the player, more or less bow on, let the player fire at me, let those shells come in, and then do a hard turn to the port, well, I guess to the starboard, and get behind that rock over there. That is the whole plan here, so I get really lucky. Shots come in, don't do a whole bunch of damage, immediately full throttle and immediately full rudder to the starboard. Gonna get in behind some cover here, and we're just gonna pelt the North Carolina. Hopefully we're gonna set the player on fire, rack up a bit more damage here as well, but also, I mean, I didn't expect to have to deal with this North Carolina. I'm making my way over to the east side of the map, right, to support over here. So I'm trying to soften up this guy for the allies that, I assume are over on the west, because they've been fighting it out over at A there. So we managed to set a fire onto the North Carolina. Whether or not that fire sticks, we're not 100% sure on that one, but we are going to start firing off at some of these enemies over here. We have the Mitsuki, and yes, it was the Mitsuki I was attempting to remember. My god, I can't believe I couldn't remember it. But anyway, Mitsuki, get a few shots into him, but that Benson pops up once again, right? So I'm going to immediately start engaging the Benson, because if we can get this Benson gone, I don't necessarily have to get the kill, but, if the team can get this guy gone, that is going to be huge, because then it's just the Mitsuki, and the Mitsuki is not in a great place at all. Very poor place indeed, right? Because you can see one of my allies over there at sea, well, a few of my allies over there at sea are actually still alive and putting up a decent fight. So Benson is gone, Mitsuki is almost gone, there's no one left in B, I know this, right? It's only the enemy North Carolina, so I'm going to get myself into B and start capping it. The rest of the enemies are over here into the east, so as long as I stay relatively far away from them, still hoping to be able to fire at them, I should be able to cap B pretty safe. The biggest concern obviously is going to be the North Carolina. So we note that the North Carolina is coming out from cover, right? And now he's going to have shots at me as soon as I come around this island here. So not terrific, but still, I'll have to take what I get here and see what happens. At the very least, I can go bow into him and hopefully try and limit the amount of citadels that I take. You know, 3/4 health is what I'm sitting on, so that's not too bad, but still do want to be careful. And once again, I mean, the range of the shores, right? You can see the range coming into play here. I'm just moving into the B point now. One of my allies has North Carolina on fire, so that's fantastic. And I'm able to fire in on the North Carolina now, hopefully keep those fires burning on that player. Really want to burn down the North Carolina as quick as we possibly can. Would be ideal. So there we go. We managed to get one fire set, one more fire set, I should say, to the enemy North Carolina. And now the player's on fire ×2, so that's great. If we can get a third fire going, that would be fantastic, because that's about what I think is like 1,000 hit points a second is what those 3 fires are going to do roughly. It's pretty devastating. We note the enemy dive bombers coming in as well. I'm doing a hard turn to the port, trying to avoid this rock here in front of me, and at the same time not ground myself, so when those dive bombers come in, I'm actually moving and hopefully able to avoid them. I do have my defensive fire up and running once again though. So we put more shots out onto the North Carolina, I should say. North Carolina has put out the fires, so we know the player has used the repair. We do see the enemy dive bombers coming in. My aircraft carrier in this game too was pretty bang up, right? We see the 2 fighter squadrons all over those dive bombers. I got my defensive fire going, and we're just going to mow down these airplanes. They aren't going to get close, and I can continue to focus on the enemy North Carolina. Just managed to cap the B zone, which is fantastic. My allies over here at A have pushed in, and they've capped A as well, so we're doing great in terms of having these 2 points. C still being contested, right? We do see, or rather, I guess most of the allies over there are gone now, but there are still some enemies over in that direction that we do want to be careful of. We're putting some more shots into the enemy North Carolina. We see the North Carolina return shots at us with the high explosive, which is good. I mean, I was like, why did he fire high explosive at me? But think about it. I've got that allied destroyer behind me as well, right? I was probably just annoying the allied North Carolina so much, or maybe he just had a better shot at me, he thought, and just said, screw it, I'm going to fire at the shores. And that's probably why I got hit with the high explosive from the North Carolina player in that instance, right? And saved my allied destroyer potentially, right? Because those shots could have came in and just wrecked the allied destroyer potentially. So that was pretty good. Not too bad at all. Range coming into play of the shores. Once again, we see another enemy, another enemy North Carolina there off in the distance, trying to get away. There's only 2 enemy ships remaining. We're capping C, which is fantastic. So it's just a matter now of finishing off the enemies and seeing how much more damage I can get. I was hoping to break the 100,000 mark in this game, considering it's been, you know, the first game in the shores that I've played in a long time. Wanted to, you know, come out of the gates kicking and see how I could do. So we do have a North Carolina off in the distance that's on, well, half health. I mean, that's still a good chunk of health. If I get all of the hit points, that'll definitely get me to 100,000 pretty quickly. The thing I need to have happen, though, is I need to have some fire set. We see more enemy dive bombers coming in. I don't have any more defensive fire, so now it's all about the you know, the firepower of the ship itself. And the whole time I'm going to continue to pelt the North Carolina, try and get as many fire set to the player as I possibly can. I think that it's all over at this point in time, because I didn't think the North Carolina could shoot over me, and then, you know, realized the mountain goes away and it's like, Thotgor, you idiot. But I get really lucky with that salvo that came in there. Real lucky, and it didn't finish me off. There's a fire finally to North Carolina, but we can see the player quickly puts it out. At the very least, I've made the player recycle the repair ability on his ship, right? So now any subsequent fires should hold, and maybe I can get the player on fire. Torpedo bombers coming in, so I was a little concerned at this point in time, so get myself off the rock. We don't need to be grounded. Put it into full throttle here and see what happens. And oh man, I was just praying that that didn't arm, and yes, managed to get by the skin of my teeth. Wasn't armed, and we're just going to continue going forward. There is still a second torpedo squadron out there, and we can see the torpedoes coming in, but yeah, those are fine. It does mean though that I pretty much have to sail at the enemy North Carolina, and this is something obvious reasons, didn't want to do. Set fire to North Carolina. We know that he's already used his repair, so that fire is going to continue to burn, and hopefully I can just keep setting fires, just doing consistent damage to him. You can see my ally destroyers, the Kiev is opening up as well. I jumped over to the enemy Shuikaku just to make sure the player was on fire. In fact, he is. Launched my shells, and then we're just going to come right back over to the North Carolina. North Carolina, where I am right now, is the biggest threat. This player could look at me and I could die, and this is something I don't want to have happen. The whole time that I'm pelting him as well, I'm watching the turrets, right? Notice that the turrets aren't looking at me anymore. Because they're not looking at me and the player is just fired, I'm executing my turn to get a better angle on this player here. I really didn't want to die at the end. I thought that would be a shame. All the fires have been put out on the enemy North Carolina, but I'm just going to continue, you know, to try and get more fires set. Just try and keep the player on fire. You can see his secondary batteries opening up on the Kiev now, I believe. Enemy Shuikaku is gone. The Kiev is getting closer. Manages to set the North Carolina on fire once again. And I really wish I had Demolition Expert at this point in time, but I'm getting close. We're getting close. We'll take a look at the end of the battle. More shots go in, and there we go. There's a fire on the North Carolina, but just my luck. Player just puts it out with the repair, so whatever. North Carolina is the last player remaining, almost gone. I'm getting pretty close, about 93,000 to the 100,000 that I wanted, but I'm happy. Whatever, it's been a great game, so we'll take what we get. More shots go into the enemy North Carolina. We can see all of my allies now are just encircled the North Carolina, and we're just going to burn them down, pelt them with whatever we've got, and just get the game over. And it was a pretty decent game. It didn't look like we were going to win there, but you know, again, there's a lot to be said about taking your time at the beginning, and you know, choosing your moves based on what the enemy is doing rather than what you think they're doing. Anyway, battle's over. 340,000 credits earned, 5,600 experience, 97,000 damage dealt. Did get the 2 kills. We got base capture there as well, so that's pretty decent. Top of the team overall with over 2,000 base experience. You can see my New Orleans friend there as well did quite good, which isn't surprising. I mean, he and I basically, or the player and I, were in and around B the entire time defending that. How some of the damage is broken down, the battleships really paid the price in this battle. When all is said and done, I walk away with 265,000 credits, and because of the dragon flag that I have and the Confederate flag on, 3 commander points is what I end up earning there. So going back to port now, I was thinking, well, you know, I couldn't remember if this was going to be my 5th point or my 4th point and where I was on the tree. So we'll take a look. We'll take a look at the commander here on the shores. You can see, you know, basically brand new commander. I've got 1 tier 1, 1 tier 2, and I have enough points now for the tier 3 ability. Now I do debate in my head whether I want vigilance or whether or not I want this one here, the high alert. And I go back and forth with it, but then I remember, like I had said at the beginning of the video, this captain is eventually going to be on the Chapiev. That's the ship that this captain's going to be on. So I want the superintendent ability, because that is going to give me the extra charge of radar, which is going to be a whole lot more important than, you know, the vigilance or the high alert on the Chapiev. So that's what I am to end up going with. And then, yeah, I get some crates, but nothing special. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. You know, hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.